Hello to all our lovely Quilters Question Time members, all of you joining us here on this glorious, absolutely amazing Tuesday evening at the end of June. It is scorching. The weather is so hot. You have not arrived at the weather forecast. This is Quilters Question Time, but we do always chat about the weather because we are British, but we're in our shirt sleeves. David hasn't got his beanie hat on. Don't need it, do you, David? Now then, we've got some really great questions this evening and also some nice things to show you. One or two of our members have sent images in which are pertinent to previous months' questions, which is really great. Peter is not here. He has gone running. He's gone to do a run called the 7 Hills. And what I just said to David is we should have a little bet, because always, not even when it's scorching hot like this, but he gets really dehydrated. He will not listen to anything I say about drinking plenty, and then he goes to sleep, falls straight asleep because he's so tired, because he's exhausted himself, but then he wakes up with horrific cramp, which of course wakes me up. So if you are joining us on Thursday for dressmaking with Philippa, let's see whether tonight he woke up with horrific cramp. Okay, so anyway, because he's not here, that means he's not here to do the draw, so I'm going to have to do it. But before I do, I'm passing you over to David so that he can welcome you.
Hi everybody, so we've got lots of people here today. Margaret Sherwood, you were the first on. Sarah Runnacles, hi. Susan Biggs, Julie Jampotts, you got a question or a comment in today. Patricia C from Poole in Dorset, and then who else did I see? Dorinda Stout from Chico in California. I know you've got a question on tonight. Lots of people I can see. I signed in and I said jokingly to Philippa, oh, there's about 50 people on, and I had a look and there were 50 people already waiting about 5 minutes before we were due to start. So you're very welcome. We're going to get cracking straight away with the draw, I think.
Oh yes, because, and I haven't even asked David, there's a huge European football tournament going on in Germany at the moment, and England are playing tonight, and they are playing, is it Slovakia? I did write it down somewhere. Anyway, they kick off at 8 o'clock UK time, which is about when we should finish. Have you been watching the football, David? No, I've watched every match. No, not every match. I've watched a lot. I don't understand any of it, but anyway. So, what is your gift this evening? Well, 2 lucky winners. You just have to be a member. You don't need to do anything. 2 lucky winners are going to win 2 fat quarters. So there's a lovely red and white dot, and then there is a chicken print there, and then 15 of those magical little clips that we all love and use. Yes, David's going to pop a picture up.
There we go.
Okay, and it is really nice quality cotton poplin fabric. So before I draw 2 numbers out of my special bag, why did the rubber chicken cross the road?
I don't know.
To stretch her legs. Okie dokie. And I'm not doing a joke every month either. It just so happens that we had a joke last month and one this month. Right, I'm digging deep. I am not looking. I am getting 2 numbers out, which I'm going to pass over to David, and he will let us know at the end who our 2 lucky winners are. Right, David, the first one's not actually a question, is it? It's to follow up on last month, and there are loads of fabulous images, so I'm going to let David do this one.
Right, so I should have got these teed up, but I was too busy teeing up the other images. I'll see if I can pull them up as we go. In fact, Philippa, why don't you go through it and I will get the images sorted out. I think that's the easiest thing. Okay,
so thank you. So this is from Julie Otley Jampotts, who has just been to Canada to a quilt show. Now, she's British and she joined this group during lockdown, and she hasn't met any of them until she went over to Canada earlier in the month, and they all said, oh, so you've got legs, because they're just used to seeing her top half in Zoom meetings. And she had done, her project was the dimensional applique project, but she sent lots of images. She had the most wonderful time, loved all the people that she'd been chatting with, and so she also...
There, I think.
Sorry, yeah. I can't actually, yes, I think that's, I'm not sure actually what that is. The one that we talked about last month is, there's a multiple image with Julie stood in the middle, David, and she's got lots of floral quilts around her, and the tulips and spring flowers was the challenge. So that is the one. There she is, silhouetted against that black background there. And then she did a crayons quilt, which was put into the silent auction at the show, raising funds for local children's charities. And that is a gorgeous quilt. That's beautiful for a child. So I'm sure that was really, really popular. It looks absolutely lovely. It's so square or rectangular. Fantastic corners. You did a beautiful job with that. So we're glad you had such a lovely time, and it's always really lovely to get the follow-up to see. So thank you very much for that, Julie Jampots. Okay, question 2, David.
Okay, so the next question is from Catherine Winter, and I think I saw that you were online, Catherine, that you'd said hello. I am thinking about sewing a wool blanket from old tired family wool blankets. I also purchased a few end scraps from Faribault Mills in Minnesota. In particular, do you have any suggestions as to the type of thread and the needle on my sewing machine for a blanket, to make a blanket quilt effectively? Also, any other advice, cautions, inspirations, whatever you can give us, Philippa, we will take. What have we got to say, Philippa?
Well, I'm not going to do it for you, Catherine, so but I have got 1 or 2 ideas. We haven't got any images of the blankets, and we don't know kind of how old they are and how well loved or well worn they are. I have used old blankets for various things over the years, and I'm just going to ask you sort of check through them fairly carefully, because sometimes they do degrade, and I have had 1 or 2 really old blankets that never kind of stopped shedding fibre and just created masses of dust, and those I kind of didn't use, although you could pop those as the middle layer into a quilt, because then everything would be trapped inside. So do just check them carefully, and also be aware, and it is that time of year that the moths are out that love to munch into our wool. So, and the softer the wool is, it's always the cashmere and your best sweaters, isn't it, that they go for, the more likely they are to go for it, because it must be easier for them to eat. So just bear that in mind. But I'm wondering how you kind of thinking that you're going to piece this, how big the pieces are, whether you're going to do a design or whether it's just going to be some kind of random patchwork. Because what I wonder that I would perhaps do with it is that I wouldn't wouldn't sew it together by machine. I might overlap, so just have raw edges, but overlap by about 1/2 inch or so, and then with a 100% woolen knitting yarn, or maybe a sock yarn that's got a little bit of nylon in it, so it's quite strong. I would do a big blanket stitch to join those together, so that you were keeping with the theme of a blanket, and you could add lots of different colours in, and maybe other little bits of embroidery stitches here and there, you know, some little lazy daisy flowers, odd bits and pieces, and then also the same on the edge. And I think that would be really lovely. It would allow you to introduce more texture, more interest in stitch, and more colour, because you could use lots of different coloured threads. So having not sort of seen the blankets or knowing what your thoughts are, that would be how I personally would approach it. I did just buy a while ago 3 fabulous Welsh blankets from an auction site, and they were in really, really great condition, except the blanket stitch around the edge was kind of wearing away. And so I've just re-blanket stitched all the way around 3 large blankets in woolen yarn, and it looked really lovely, and I really enjoyed doing it. So perhaps that might be an idea, Catherine, and of course in the future we'd like to hear what you end up doing.
Okay, thank you. for that, Philippa. So the next question is from Dorinda Stout, and Dorinda, I saw you'd said hi as well, so I think you were Chico, weren't you, in California? And Dorinda, we've got an image for this one, so I've actually got it teed up for a change. Dorinda says, I'm making this quilt for my daughter and her fiance. They are getting married this August. After sewing around the applique shapes, I did a triple stitch using Superior Threads Fantastico variegated thread, and it made such a difference. I really love it. I'm not quite finished, but I will be in the next couple of weeks. So here is my question. This quilt has 12 outdoor. Sorry, you're trying to jump in further. This quilt has 12 outdoor scenes as well as some applique in all four corners of the borders. I'm going to have this professionally quilted, and I would love to have some suggestions as to how it should be quilted. I've got no idea how to discuss it with a long arm quilter. Thank you for all your wonderful classes, and that's from Dorinda.
Okay, Dorinda. Oh, David, you missed off. I've learned so much, and they really are a joy to watch. Yeah, thank you, Dorinda. So we've got the full quilt and also a detail of the top anyway, and the block is really similar to our precision piecing block. So it's got a pieced background and then applique or applique on top of that, and some fantastic scenes. It looks really wonderful, lovely colour palette, all looks really beautifully made, so I have to congratulate you on that. And yes, in the detail we can see the fabulous stitch work that you did around the applique, and you're absolutely right, it really adds another dimension to it, doesn't it? I'm going to suggest that you keep it kind of in the outdoorsy theme, and that something leafy would perhaps be the way to go. From what we can see there, a lot of it is kind of conifers, quite spiky leaves, that kind of thing, and so I would have an all-over pattern, I think, in something like that. I mean, I don't think you want to try to kind of do too much with it, because you've got a lot going on already with your piecing and the applique over the top. So I would look at naturalistic leaf designs, and your long armour will have had lots of experience of sewing all kinds of quilts, and she'll have lots of information. So as always, and we're going to chat about this further, just look at what you've got there in the quilt, in the design, and I think that you want to kind of accentuate the story, and the story being the applique and those kind of outdoor trees and plant shapes. You've got birds and animals as well, but and go with that, pick that as your starting point, so that you're keeping your theme tight, but you are adding another layer of story to it. So I'm going to say this to everybody tonight, aren't we? So we wait and see what happens.
Okay, thank you for that, Dorinda. So the next question is from Rhonda Musso-Berg, and Rhonda says, Philippa, what has been your most challenging obstacle to overcome lately in quilting? Your quilts behind you have such lovely movement and colour, and I enjoy your classes. Thank you. And that's from Rhonda.
That's really, really kind of you. Thank you, Rhonda. I wonder where you are, Rhonda. I wonder where you are in the world. Anyway, if you're listening, you have to let us know. What has been my most challenging obstacle in my quilting? Well, the sewing that I have done recently has been more garment making with the Chanel jacket. And also I've been making quite a lot of covers for and covering quite a lot of lampshades, which I might chat about later if we have time. My biggest challenge in terms of quilting is having the time to do it, and also it isn't just that. I think the whole kind of dynamic of my sewing space has changed since we started Quilters Question Time, and it's become a kind of community space where we are here quite often, and there's just, can you remember when we started, David, and the room was fairly tidy, wasn't it? And now it is just jammed full of teaching stuff. I've got a loft in here, and in the loft there is a box, well, not all in the loft, some are stacked up here. There is a fairly substantial box with each class in. We've done over 40 classes, and we're just drowning in garments and samples and things. But I'm a very kind of I need to work on my own in the quiet, just me, for long periods of time when I make a quilt. And so because the room is used for other things and it's not me on my own, I haven't really done anything. So David has asked me about that, and I said, David, do not worry, I have not made my last exhibition quilt, but just now isn't the time, because it takes me 6 months to a year, and for me it's a very private process. You will not see me working on an exhibition quilt throughout the making of that piece of work. It will only be revealed when it goes into its first show, and I like the total kind of submersion of that, and the finding the answers myself. And I like the fact that, you know, it arrives in a show and it's unexpected and nobody's seen it and knows nothing about it. I think for me, I think it has more impact if it does that. So that is my challenge, but I will get back to it, and I'm not unhappy. I'm full of kind of ideas, and I'm always doing tons of creative stuff. I've been painting my front door for the last 3.5 weeks. It's had 9 coats of paint on it. Davey's saying, is it ever going to be finished? So that's the answer, but thank you for the question.
I have been trying to persuade Philippa to make another quilt, and I've said, you know, we can clear the decks, we can give you some space to do that, but Philippa has too many other things going on in the house, like front doors and greenhouses, and there's all sorts of things always going on. Okay, the next question is from Debbie, and Debbie, I didn't put your last name down there. Well, I'll see if I can find out your last name. You messaged us last time, and you've given us some more information about the answer to the question from last time. You say during the Q&A session, one of the other members asked about thread for hand quilting. I love Superior Thread's micro quilter. I use 7003 the cream colour for lights and 7008 the grey colour for darks. And she's given us a picture, which again I haven't got teed up yet, I'll put it up in a minute, to show you what it looks like. And Debbie says, thanks for being there to answer all our questions and for sharing your amazing skills and talent with us.
And that's just David. Okay, yeah, so a beautiful quilt coming up to show you. Now, micro quilter is a polyester thread, and it's a very, very fine polyester thread. It's a 100 weight thread, and you can probably guess that from, gosh, I'm roasting, it's so warm in here. You can probably guess that from the name micro quilter. And so that's quite interesting to me, because I'm not really a hand quilter. It's not anything that I really do. And generally, hand quilters do tend to use more robust threads than that. But you have we got the quilt there?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. You can see what beautiful piece of work that is. And so the darker thread used on the darker areas and the light on the light areas, there's a theme going on already, isn't there, in terms of piecing with applique over the top. That's what we're seeing quite a bit of already today. So for those of you that are hand quilters, that might be something that you want to try, but be aware that your stitches are going to be very discreet with that, because it is such a fine thread. But obviously there is a place for everything, and it might be what you want for a particular quilt. So thank you very much for that, Debbie. That is great to know. Now, moving on.
Okay, so we're getting through the questions tonight, which is good. The next question is from Joe. I think it's Farrar, is it? Or Farrar. And Joe says, no matter how I try, I can't get the points on my triangles square, or on my squares to be equal. I seem to be able to get all but one right, or if it's made up of a number of small triangles, all but 2, and it's driving me nuts. Any tips, please? I'm ready to throw in the towel on making anything with a point. I'll stick to curved designs or squares or big triangles. Thank you. And that's from Joe Farrar.
And so, Joe, when you arrive in the room, do they all go, hurrah? What a wonderful name. That's really wonderful. Right, okay, so precise stitching begins with, well, I'm going to say precision piecing, quite frankly, which is the second class in series 1, and it was one of the earliest classes, as you can guess, that we filmed, and we relatively recently refilmed it and updated it and added some extra content. And everything is important, so good quality fabrics that are not going to stretch, accurate cutting is really important. If your individual units are not of the correct size to start with, then you're going to get variation in that. You are going to get variation in your little units if your sewing isn't accurate, you know, if your 1/4 inch seam isn't a 1/4 inch seam and it isn't consistent in all of the seams that you are making. Your pressing makes a big difference. Even your pinning makes a difference. All of this, including rotary cutting, everything, rotary cutting, sewing, pressing, the whole bit, it is shown in detail in precision piecing. My suggestion is that if you've got both in your library, go to Precision Piecing 2 and watch that, because it has got updates and more information with it. I promise you, Joe, that if you watch that class and your work doesn't improve after watching that class, what can I promise her? Well, I just promise you won't be disappointed. You're going to find lots of tips that are really going to help you, and it is one of the most popular classes that I teach, and my students always say that there are things there that really help them, because I really analyse all the reasons and places where it can go wrong to identify them for you, so that you can do the best job and really enjoy your sewing and not throw in the towel. That is not the answer. The help is there. It's in your library. You have it.
Okay, Joe, so I did check in your account, and you have got it in your library, and you haven't watched it yet, so do go ahead and watch it, because it will make a huge difference. Okay, the next question is from Tina Parr, and Tina says, my question is about colour. When I was learning to pick fabrics for quilts 15 years ago, I was taught to pick a light, a medium and a dark, and then ranges of those values. I think I've heard Philippa saying very similar things. But now it seems like the modern fat quarter bundles are basically the same value. Do I just assume they all go together? They are beautiful bundles, but I doubt myself putting citrine next to orange. What have you got to tell us about that, Philippa, please? Okay,
Tina, that's a really good question, and we haven't had that question before, so it's always really nice to get something new and different. And I'm going to chat about the precision piecing class again, because in that class I asked you for a light, a medium, a dark and a focus fabric. And the focus fabric is the print, the floral, the thing that's got several colours in, and that is my starting point. Now I get the fabric with the print that I really love, and then I can pick colours out of that fabric and bring them all together. But if you want dramatic quilts that are going to speak, then you need to have colours and tonal value across the full range from light to dark. You don't have to have white and black, but you need to have a good range. I always remember, and I probably mentioned this in the class, I always remember teaching this class, and a lady brought 4 fabrics. Sometimes I would always say, when we're doing this in a class situation, bring several. You're in your car, you can chuck them in, then you've got options, we can play around with it. And I find it really interesting, because I kind of go around the room and I chat to everybody individually after I've done the kind of initial kind of explanation of what we're going to do, and they won't cut their fabric until I've told them what actually they should use. Well, and that's not what it's about, but anyway, you do have to be brave. But anyway, on this particular occasion, the lady had 4 fabrics, just 4 fabrics, and they were 4 lilac fabrics, all in a mid-tonal range. They were virtually indistinguishable from one another, and she did all of this careful cutting and piecing for a whole day, 6 hours, and when she held up her finished block, it was just a piece of lilac fabric. Okay, and it's a thing that I do bang on about, and particularly in season 2, when we're doing more kind of advanced work. But if you don't have good tonal a good tonal range, it is all going to merge. So I think your answer with that, Tina, is that your bundles are your starting point, and it may be that you are buying additional fabrics from the same range so that they work together, but you can easily add planes, and you can get that drama with your lights and your darks by introducing other fabrics. So use them as your starting point, but don't think that they are the be all and end all. Be creative and bring your own personality to it with additional fabrics. So good luck with that.
Okay, hopefully that's helpful there, Tina. Now the next question I hardly dare ask because I know what kind of response it might get from Philippa. But this is from Carla Wheeler, and Carla says, can you touch on how you like to square up your half square triangles?
I can touch on that, Carla. Absolutely, I can. And it's one of the things that I really love doing. I have a method which you can find in that all famous precision piecing class, which is getting mentioned for just about every question so far this evening. I make the half square triangle units larger than the finished thing is going to be so that I can trim them up. And I trim fabric off all four sides. So the unit is made larger than it needs to be, and then it is trimmed up. I actually make it from squares. I'm not sewing triangles together. So let's say I'm doing a light and a dark half square triangle unit. I will have a square of the light fabric, a square of the dark. There'll be a diagonal line from corner to corner, and I will sew on either side of that line, cut along the drawn line, press, and then trim up. I show it in great detail in the class, and there's even a little cut and roll technique with the trimming so that you don't catch the seam and distort a perfect square. So again, in your library, waiting for you, just desperate, it's crying out for you to visit it, half square triangle units.
Okay, so Philippa surprised me then. She didn't say what I assumed she was going to say something slightly different, but that. So
what was I going to say?
No, I'll tell. No.
David thinks he can read my mind.
I'm very good at making videos, but I'm not very good at quilting and answering quilting questions. So I will keep my thoughts to myself. Okay, the next question is from Carol, and Carol, I haven't got your last name, but I think you are on the feed. I think it is. Carol Charlie, is it? Anyway, Carol, we've got a question from you from Leicestershire in the UK. Which is the best wadding material for a wall hanging? I am thinking of the weight of the finished project, which will be 53 inches long and 28 inches wide. I've attached a photo which I will put up of the project unfinished. Thank you, and that's from Carol.
Okay, Carol, that looks really, really lovely, and on the image on the screen it looks really lovely and bright. And can I just say how tidy your carpet is? No, you must have just vacuumed it, especially for that photo, didn't you? Well, we noticed. You did a really good job. Okay, now I don't think it's about weight. Okay, you are going to sew a hanging sleeve onto this to actually hang it on the wall, and probably a wooden baton. And again, we have that information in, I think it's Further Fabulous Finishes, or anyway, David's going to have a look and tell me, or somebody will. Anyway, it's more about the stability of the wadding, the batting, okay, not about the weight. You know, 2 screws in the wall with the batten will hold a great deal of weight, so don't worry about that. But what you don't want is a very soft fluid wool or a soft bamboo or something like that that is going to wave. Okay, so I personally prefer to use something like 100% cotton, which is very felt-like and dense, and is really good at holding the work flat to the wall and making sure that the edges don't wave. Now we're going to come to this again. We've got quite a lot of questions on quilting, but our class Quilt as Desired, one of the things it covers is kind of layering up and blocking out and finishing quills, and that might be really useful for you, Carol. But yeah, stability and firmness and kind of structure to the wadding is what you're looking for, and don't worry about the weight. So I've always used warm and natural 100% cotton for really big quilts, and they always hang really beautifully. So something like that is where I would be heading.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Angela Blackmon from Louisville in North Carolina, and there's an image which goes with this, and I really love this image. The question is really out there and a real challenge for me, says Angela, but I thought you might have some great ideas. I want to create a wall hanging using the photo above. I'm thinking of using organza for the foreground flowers to mimic the translucency of the flowers. Have you ever worked with organza, and have you ever used any fusible bonding backing with it? I'm thinking of working with it, using it as some sort of collage and possibly adding some embellishment to create the look of the raindrops. I plan to use Inktense pencils and blocks to create the background, making the blurry effect. Any suggestions greatly appreciated. I so enjoy your online instruction. And that's from Angela in North Carolina.
So Angela, yeah, David's been waxing lyrical about your image. He thinks it's absolutely gorgeous. He absolutely loves it, and it is a really beautiful image. Really lovely soft colours, and they look like pelargoniums to me. No, not pelargoniums, geraniums that have been in a shower of rain. So there's lovely interest, isn't there, in the light that's been picked up on those raindrops. So how would I go about it? Now then, yes, I have used organza and organdy a lot, and in garment making as well as in quilt making. Now then, what I think you will find is that it will be too translucent, and when you put those very sheer kind of see-through fabrics onto a background, they will disappear. And so they won't really show up. I mean, you'll have to get one or two small pieces to try, and you can get in lots of different colours. A way that you could deal with that is you could use that fabric and you could paint on top of it to add interest and kind of depth to it. But I'm not sure that for the majority of the flowers that is the way to go. There was a fabric range years ago, and it was in every colour and shade that you could. There were hundreds, well not hundreds, but dozens of different options on this, and it was called Fossil Fern, and it almost looked as though it had kind of little drops of rain on it. And I wonder whether kind of the background layer of fabric should be a more conventional cotton fabric, or yeah, I do think it wants to be cotton actually. I don't think silk or anything like that, because it doesn't really want to have much of a sheen to it. But I wonder that you could then do some organzy or organdy 3D type flowers to be stitched on top. So what I mean by that is that you would put your cotton flowers down onto your background, and then and you might quilt it at that point. You might get your quilting in it, but then you could take the outline of your flower and you could draw that onto a larger piece of your sheer fabric, and you could just free motion several times around the edge to give yourself an edge, and then you could cut it out. I mean, you could do satin stitch around it if you want to. It does look really beautiful with a really lovely sheen. Not very wide satin stitch, it would take you quite a while, but you could do it. Then cut it out, so cut the flower out from the bigger piece of fabric and then apply it on top of some of the other flowers, and then you're going to get that softness that you want, and it won't be lost in the same way as just putting organdy or organza down onto your background fabric. It will have more dimension to it, and it will catch the light in a different way. So that is the direction that I would be thinking of going with that. But you need to do quite a bit of experimentation with fabrics and techniques before you launch into this, because it's going to be a lot of work, and you want to know pretty much where you're going before you start. You don't need to have all your answers, but you want to know the fabrics that you are going to use, the colours, what you're going to actually be working with before you start to assemble your piece together. So hopefully that gives you some other pointers and directions that you might go in. And again, we won't hold our breath, but we would like to see in the future where you go, particularly David. He wants to see how, we all want to see how it translates into a textile piece of artwork.
Absolutely, I love that. We'll just have one more look at that image, and I would have that on my wall. I would have that image on my wall, and I would have a piece of artwork that was a piece of quilting wall hanging that's done like that. It's I think it's lovely. Okay, so the next question is from Trix. and Tricks also has an image, so I will pull that up. And Tricks Russell from Norfolk, I think, actually I'm not sure whether that's Norfolk USA or Norfolk UK. I've decided to use a 1 by 1.2mm blanket stitch for some raw edge applique, and I'm worried that because the stitches are so close together that it creates lots of stitching holes, and as a newbie, and as I am a newbie to applique, I'm paranoid that this will weaken the fabric to the point of ripping it further down the road. I'm probably being completely paranoid, but if you could put my mind to rest, that would be appreciated. I'm using a tearaway stabiliser and a brand new 7010 Schmetz universal needle. Picks attached of my sample pieces. So here's one of the sample pieces. One of which is to highlight the stitch holes. So that's the stitch holes, and then I think we've got another one of a slightly bigger one. The picture's come the wrong way around, but we can see these are what she's been doing. Okay, so Philippa, is she going to ruin her fabric?
Oh, and you sound really worried about it. Oh, don't worry about it. It's all part of the kind of learning process. And I know we're kind of keen to get it all absolutely right, but I've made endless mistakes throughout my sewing career. And it is, I always say this, my husband and I always say this, getting it wrong is part of getting it right. Okay, what I really like is that you are doing a lot of sampling to really work out how this is going to perform for you. And that is what I love, because that's answering lots of your questions before you go any further. So what we have is a very small blanket stitch, and behind the applique motif and the background fabric you have got some tearaway stabilizer, which is supporting the work as you stitch it. But what you don't tell me is how these motifs are actually held onto the background fabric, whether you've got any fusible in there, like steamer seam or Wonder Under or something like that. So I don't know, but if you did, then I think it's all absolutely fine, because the adhesive product will be holding the motif in place, and the little bit of stitch is just a little bit extra, but it doesn't really bite into the fabric. So it isn't that your fabric is going to rip because you've got lots of holes. I've done incredibly tiny stitches really close together. But what will happen over time, if this is a quilt that is used, is that the edges of the applique are hardly caught and held down, and they will lift and pull away if there isn't any adhesive product behind that. So I don't think that you need to increase the length between stitches, but I think you need to increase the width, the side to side throw-in that bites into the fabric, because that is going to answer the problem of holding the fabric down to the background much more securely. I don't know if you've got our raw edge applique class in your library. I think it's about class number 6 or something like that in series 1, but it is a really useful class for all of these questions. It's got tons of information on how to do this, how to go around circles, how to deal with points, all kinds of things, sewing machine settings, which threads to use, and so on. And I think I want you to ask yourself another question. What is this stitch doing? Okay, it isn't really holding the edge down very strongly, and it isn't really showing itself up as a decorative stitch. What do you want it to do? Okay, I think this is your opportunity to make more of the stitch by making it more definite, and you could maybe use more colour, more contrasting colour, and make a feature of it, because it's, to me, it's always a little bit of a shame unless you're really trying to be discreet, in which case, you know, I wouldn't be doing raw edge like this. I think that it's a shame to do all this work for it not really to be seen. Yeah, you know, if you just want to hold it down, then a regular straight stitch would be easier, wouldn't it? So ask yourself those questions and see if that helps you. So it isn't that there is right or wrong or you're doing it incorrectly or something like that. There is just finding the answer for the project in terms of the technical aspects of it, how it's going to perform in the future, and in the design and the look of it. So Trix, let us know what you decide.
Okay, so that was a good answer there. And Trix, I know that you've got the raw edge applique and the turned edge applique class in your library, so definitely well worth watching those as well for some further tips on that. Okay, the next question is, actually we've got some comments here that have come in. So one came in via email, which surprised me. So from Linda Baldry, and she says the lady with the wool blankets suggests to put them in the freezer for 24 hours and that will kill any bugs off. So that's a good tip. And then where were we? I can't find
we can't have pregnant pauses, David.
I know, I'm sorry, I can't find the other
keep
comment.
looking.
Oh, that's right. Carol Charlie says, thank you, Philippa. Yes, the carpet was clean when she took the photograph. So thank you for that. Okay, so the next question is from Barbara Kingman. And Barbara says, I have difficulty choosing and putting colours together. Do you use a colour wheel? And if so, can you recommend a simple and easy one to use, please?
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the comment about freezing things. And I quite often put garments and things in the freezer. I think I'm just going to ask you to research this a little bit more, because I've heard different things. Also, that freezing and then defrosting and then freezing again really kills the eggs. I did read something on one occasion that freezing once for a short time wasn't sufficient to do that. So do look into that a little bit more for your wool. I did have a jumper in the freezer for ages, and I thought it was my son's that I was meant to fix. And but I'd bought this sweater for my son, but I'd also bought my dad one identically, slightly different sizes. Anyway, I found it after weeks in the freezer, and then I thought, oh gosh, I was supposed to be fixing that for Dan, my son. So I spent ages, I mean literally days, carefully darning this jumper, and then Dan said, oh, it's not mine, it must be Grandpa's. And so I gave it back to my dad, and all he did was sleep in it in the winter. And I spent hours on it, and I thought, flipping heck, I wish I hadn't bothered. Anyway, colour. Right, okay, so Barbara, it's interesting this, isn't it? When I teach in a classroom situation, and I'm just going to sort of do precision piecing again, because it's such an interesting thing. We'll have 20 ladies in the classroom, all going to make the same project, and everybody has wildly different colour choices and fabric choices. Generally, if they're wearing blue, they've got blue fabric on the table. If they're wearing red, they've got red fabric on the table. And I'll look at some people's fabrics and I think, flipping heck, that's not going to work. And then they make it, and it's amazing. And I just think, oh my goodness, that's so fabulous. And so you have to kind of trust your instinct with that. I think that the colour wheel is quite useful. I haven't got one on the wall there, but not to worry, you look at one online. It is quite useful to go with adjacent colours, so the colours on either side of a colour and then the opposite colour. So for example, the opposite of blue is orange, the opposite of purple is yellow, and so on. But I don't think on the whole people are really bad at colour. I think people are good at colour, and they know what they like. And it refers back to our earlier question. What people are not good at is picking tonal value and having lights, mediums and darks. And I wonder that if you go back to quilts that you have made and projects that you are making, you have a lot of the fabrics in there are in a mid-tonal range, and things look muddy and are not dramatic and bright and engaging. So what I wonder that you need to really work on is introducing more lights and more darks and being brave. You don't need to have big quantities of them, but you need that contrast to make things sparkle. So perhaps you would have a look at that, and then maybe next month get back to us on that and see whether that led you to a different way of thinking about things.
Okay, thank you, Philippa. So the next question is not a question, it is a thank you, and it's from Sue Biggs, and she was just saying thank you for the Festival of Quilts tickets. We did a draw last time for the tickets and she was one of the winners. My friend and I will come and say hello to you on the 4th of August. Really looking forward to it.
So the Festival of Quilts is coming up soon. It is our big European quilting event, the biggest quilt show in Europe. This will be our 5th year to have a stand, won't it? Yeah, it's our 5th year. And we were just discussing our theme, and we need to get our lighting booked by the 8th of July. So it's coming up soon. So we're very excited, and we are delighted that you won, Sue. And we look forward to seeing you in August.
Okay, so a question from a different Sue this time. Now, and Sue, this is from Sue King, and she says, do you ever use bottom thread when quilting? And we weren't quite sure whether you were meaning bottom line thread or bobbin thread, but they're almost the same thing, I think, aren't they, Philippa?
Yeah, so bottom line is superior thread 60 weight polyester thread, which is designed as a bobbin thread, and it is the thread that I use in my bobbin most often when I'm quilt making, and that is for piecing. Use it in applique, use it in quilting, use it in all kinds of different operations. So if that was the question that you were asking, Sue, the answer is yes. David wasn't expecting that.
Okay, a short answer from Philippa. Okay, the next question then is from Joyce Crease, and Joyce says, can you share the lighting that you find most effective in your sewing room? I sew a lot at night and the ceiling lighting I have casts shadows. I have freestanding spotlights as well, but still not happy. That's from Joyce.
And do we have an image, David?
Oh, we do, yes.
Sorry, David comes thinking he's all ready, and then I ping him a load of images to include shortly before we're kind of ready to go. So this is one of my 3 light bulbs that are in IKEA light fittings over my table. Now this is, I have to read that out to you. Oh, well done, thank you. So there are 3 of them. You can also see there is a bank of spotlights that I can actually move about. And then we have lights for filming on a tripod. And one of them, David leaves here all the time because I use it when I'm actually sewing or taking photos or ironing. So I have tons of light. Now that is a 30 watt 6000K 3,825 lumen light bulb, and I believe that single light bulb cost about £60. Peter, my husband, sorted them out for me, so it is a large investment. I mean, it goes into a normal screw fitting. You don't need a special light, but that is over £200 worth of bulbs there. Now I don't want to tempt fate.
Daylight bulbs as well.
Yeah, they are. They've been in some years and are doing really well, so touch wood. So we couldn't find the name and we couldn't find the receipt because we've had them such a long time, so but that is my best shot. You can take that photo to your local electrical supplier.
Okay, hopefully that's helpful there, Joyce. The next question is from Julie Osbalston, and Julie says, she asked a question, well actually this isn't a question, it's another comment. She asked a question last month about the benefits of a stitch regulator, and she says she took the plunge and got one, and it has massively improved her free motion quilting. She's so glad she got her Benina, she totally loves it.
So we are delighted for you, Julie. Anything that gets you sewn at that sewing machine and enjoying yourself is absolutely what we want to hear. So congratulations on that. We really, really love to hear when everything is going the best for you.
Okay. Okay, so the next question is from Anne Harris, and we've got a picture of this. This isn't Anne, this is the quilt that she's making. And I'm just trying to see who the lady is who's done the picture. Julia Watch.
Yeah.
Watch. So she says, I'm currently following the Vesta Row a Month project. The Vesta Row a Month project designed by Julia Watch, as I thought I needed more practice at FPP and applique. I have since decided a hole in the head would be less painful. We've all made those kind of decisions, haven't we? It's very striking design, so I will persevere. It looks like a great design. Month 2 calls for lots of circular applique dots, about 1 inch in diameter. I'm still practicing these, as mine look a bit like threepenny bits, although I'm getting there, and for the Americans, threepenny bits have lots of edges and corners and things.
It's a coin. They might not even know it's a coin.
Yeah, it's a very old coin. They haven't been around for a while, albeit using very labour-intensive method. And she says she wraps the template, sprays, foil wrap, press, remove foil, press, insert plumpifying material, which is a word now, needle turn, and she says she needs 35. Do you have any tips to help me across the finish line, please? And that's from Anne Harris.
Can you just leave the image up a sec, David?
Yes.
So I just want you to look at that quilt, because I want you to look at the tonal value from light to dark. So it has got a lot of dark in it. There is a lot of black, and then we've got mid tonal range in those turquoisey tealy colours and in the mustardy yellow, and then you've got the light. And I can't tell from the image whether that is white or a pale grey or whatever, and it's not a large amount of it, but that is what's giving it the sparkle. Okay, it has got light through to dark, so thank you. Now I'll answer the question on the circles. So where are they? My Karen K Buckley perfect circles, which I absolutely love. They are one of the best tools in my sewing room. Little mylar plastic templates. I don't quite use the method that Karen suggests on the instruction sheet that comes with those little templates. I have a different method, and it is shown in detail in the turned edge applique class. There are a number of steps to it, but it's incredibly successful and not as complex. Certainly doesn't sound as complex as what you are doing with yours, Anne. And I have to smile at you. It's a mere 35. Come on. I mean, the bird by bird quilt, which is the book quilt, had 200 plus half-inch ones, and I had a best of show at the Festival of Quilts miniature, which was applique, and I made mylar templates using a hole punch, and my circles were 1/4 of an inch across. So if I can do them with my method that small, you certainly, I think, are going to have success with larger ones, plumpifying material or not. So please have a look at the turned edge applique class. I hope it will help you. Plumpifying.
I love that. That is now a word in our lectionary. That's definitely been added in there. Okay, so the next question is from Amanda Broomfield, and Amanda says, I have a bit of an odd question. I recently had a stroke, which in her words is a bit of a bugger with a lot of things. My non-dominant hand has the shakes when I try to use it to stabilise my sewing, especially when hand piecing. I was wondering if you had come across anything in your travels like an adjustable clamp that could assist me. I know there are such things as embroidery hoops that can be anchored between your legs so that both hands can be utilised. Many thanks, and that's from Amanda Broomfield.
And I had a little think about this, Amanda, and I'm really sorry that you had a stroke. And we chuckled when we read that I recently had a stroke, which is a bit of a bugger. Well, that is a very British saying. Yeah, it's more than a bit of a bugger. I mean, that's mild swearing there, but I think you perfectly entitled to that. Always makes me think of Love Actually and the Hugh Grant character, because his word for everything that goes wrong is bugger. Bugger! bugger, and it's a really useful word. Anyway, that wasn't what I was really thinking about. I was thinking about your problem. So let's say you are right-handed and you want to do some hand sewing, and so the needle you are using with your right hand, but your left hand has a tremor, so the work isn't being held to enable you to actually do the stitching. I couldn't think of any kind of clamp or frame that would really help you, because what I'm conscious of is that the non-dominant hand is doing more than hold the work. It's positioning it just so. It's moving with your dominant hand. The two hands are working together. It isn't just fixed, staying there as you sew. And when we don't know how bad that is. We don't know how much the tremor is. I mean, what I wonder when these life-changing things happen, and this is just speculation. I mean, it hasn't happened to me, so I'm just trying to offer you food for thought, really. That your life has changed, and some of the things that you could do easily before, you can't do so well now. Now, that's not to say they're not going to come back. It may only be temporary, but you will find that other things are easier for you to do. So, you know, is it easier to do your piecing by machine? You know, if the hand sewing is a battle and you are not getting the results you want, is working on the sewing machine better? Do you need to change the type of work that you are hand sewing? So, you know, perhaps previously you did really precise blocks that you stitched, and they required a lot of dexterity, which at the moment you don't have. Maybe if you want to keep hand sewing, you're going to work with maybe just squares initially, or rectangles, or easier shapes, and you are going to take your work in a different direction and perhaps go more with print and work on colour and pattern and value, and create interest through the fabrics and how you put them together, rather than the complexity of the block. So what I'm suggesting is that you analyze what's happening here, analyze what works for you and what doesn't, and maybe at this point in time do the stuff that you are getting the results that you're happy with, and hope that your dexterity improves by all of those skills that you keep practicing, and that you will get back to some of the types of work that you were doing previously. In that way, I would hope that there is less frustration and new ways of working open up for you to keep your skill set growing and to keep your interest developing, really. So I don't know if that's any help, but I couldn't come up with a clamp, I'm sorry, but maybe try to think in other ways of overcoming the issue.
Okay, hopefully that's helpful, Amanda. Right, so we're coming up towards the hour, and we've got a few more really interesting questions, so we're going to keep going for a few more minutes.
I need to hurry up, don't I?
The next question was from Linda Lang from Ontario in Canada, and again there is a picture with this one, if I can pull it up. Let's see if that works. Okay, so Linda says, I'm making a heart quilt with a lot of different blocks that I won at a quilt lotto. That is, everyone makes a 6-inch block and then they draw to see who wins all the blocks. So she won presumably all but one of these blocks. I've enclosed photos with the front. I'm piecing the back with some applique hearts on it. I was thinking of using variegated red thread when quilting on my domestic machine. When is it appropriate to use variegated thread? I'm concerned it may look funny on plain fabric and that the motif will disappear in the spots. And that's from Linda Lang. Okay,
Linda, lots of times when you might use a variegated thread, there are many types of variegated thread on the market. So some are very subtle with hardly any change in the colour. So you might have a pale pink going almost to white, so it'd be really soft. But you might have something like a black going to green, going to red, going to yellow, and get a lot of change in colour. So I just have a couple of things to say on this. What I think is a red variegated variegated thread going across those blocks is going to kind of muddy them, really. They're quite clean and graphic, and some of them have got quite a lot going on with them. So in the middle row, so if we look from the bottom up, so sorry, 1, 2, 3 rows up, the middle square there has got 5 pale pink hearts in it. I think if you use a red variegated thread over that, it's just going to lose those hearts, it's going to disappear. But I think if you have a pale variegated sort of pink thread and that goes across those areas, that's going to be fine. And I think it's actually also going to be fine in your sashing as well, because the sashing's so strong that a pale thread isn't going to kind of disrupt the line, is it? You're still going to read it. But what I would say, in the outer pink border, which is pale, then yes, then put your red variegated or even a plain red or a dark pink in there to add an extra layer of interest. So I think you need different threads in different areas, but just be a little bit careful that you don't muddy it up. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. The next question is from Jane Hare, and there's an image with this one again. I think this is the right image. Let's just check. This is the right image. Good. So there's the image. This is a piece of cotton sheeting which I eco-printed quite some time ago. I can't remember which leaves I used, but I did use iron water as a mordant and lots of steam to get the leaf to give up its print. And I'm going to ask Philippa if she can interpret that for me in a minute. It's about 180 centimetres long and 50 centimetres wide. I'm really pleased with how the prints have turned out and would like to make it into a hanging. As you can see in the close-up photo, I have the piece all sandwiched up, ready to start stitching, and that's how it has sat for quite a while because I'm not quite sure how to tackle it. What advice can you give me about how to quilt the piece to make the leaf prints pop, and what weight and colour threads should I use? One thought is that I use trapunto under the leaves and then shadow quilt, but I would love to hear what you think. Now, I'm presuming eco-printing means that she used an actual leaf and printed it onto the fabric, is it?
Yes, so she's used a leaf, but there is a reason why there isn't a class on this, because I've never done it. Right. So it's not my area, so I can't really give you too much information on that. But yes, she has used actual leaves there. What I imagine is that there is a random placement across the piece. I can't imagine that this is the whole piece if it's 180 centimetres long, 50 centimetres, they're monster leaves if it was. Your easiest way to define those shapes is by free motion, going around the edge and also putting some additional veining into that. If you want to put trapunto in, you're going to have to unpin it and apply your trapunto wadding, and there is a class for that in the series, and then sandwich it back together. I don't know how good your kind of free motion is really, but you don't need to follow it slavishly, do you? You know, it can be kind of quite random really, and just following the general outline. I'd be quite tempted to use autumnal colours, because obviously falling leaves is an autumn theme, isn't it? So, you know, rusts and browns and yellows and ochres, that kind of thing. I would kind of practice that, and on a scrap, I would also be stitching just some leaf shapes just in stitch, so not around the actual the print that you've got there, but overlapping and in different colours. And I would use a 40 weight shiny polyester. I mean, ideally you would be better with a thicker thread, but it's tricky. You could try some couching, but again, that's a lot of twisting and turning. You could try 2 threads through 1 needle. So if you have 2 spools and a slightly more robust needle, you can put 2 threads through as one, and I'm pretty sure talk about that in Quilt as Desired, David. So just some pointers there to help you, but I think that you can really make it a more cohesive thing with the addition of just stitched leaf shapes as well. So hopefully that will help you, Jane.
Okay, thank you. Now the next question is from Jane Fitzpatrick, and this is about her Bargello quilt top that she's just finished following Philippa's Bargello class, which is one of my favourite classes. I love the Bargello designs. Thank you for the fabulous class. It's full of information and easy to follow. I'm making the quilt top and I'm really pleased with the results, but I'm still considering how to finish the quilt. And here is the quilt.
Okay, and can I just say, tonal value, that little bit of black.
Very good, yeah. I was thinking of quilting with different coloured coloured thread following the wavy lines of the bargello. I would then like to use a facing on the quilt rather than binding. Do you have any advice on facing a quilt of this size, which is 61 by 54 inches? I've watched the borders and facing class, well done Jane, get that in, and tried facing a small sample piece but feel a bit daunted at the thought of facing a much bigger quilt. Any advice or suggestions would be greatly welcomed.
Okay Jane, so well done, it's a beautiful quilt. So yes to your wavy lines for your quilting. Now when you layer this up, have your backing fabric bigger than the quilt top, have your batting, your wadding bigger than the quilt top, so you've got some excess fabric going beyond the edge. When you do your quilting lines, extend them into that excess by about an inch or so, because if you've got ½ an inch for your seam allowance to turn under for your facing, the seam allowance will lay flatter than a narrow seam allowance. So you're going to have in your seam allowance for your facing and have a ¼ inch of quilt top but ½ an inch of wadding batting and ½ an inch of backing ultimately. Cut your facing pieces on the straight grain parallel to the selvage for the least stretch. Doesn't matter if you have to join it, that's absolutely fine, doesn't make any difference. Pin the heck out of it, don't stretch anything. You might consider sewing it on with your walking foot so that it moves through the sewing machine. Make sure everything's very light, nothing is dragging. I can't see any problems, just follow the steps in the class, it will be wonderful.
Okay, great, thank you. So the next question is from Liz, and I have neglected to put your last name on there, Liz. So and there is a picture that goes with this. I'm looking for suggestions on how to quilt this quilt top. So we've got a theme going here on how to quilt my quilt top this month. It's funny how we have similar questions lots of months. I made this from following the beginners class. I started quilting with straight lines running parallel to the squares, but found they were not always straight, which irritated my eye. So I unpicked it all and it has been in a drawer ever since. I'm looking for ideas, and as it is a simple pattern, I think the quilting needs to be fairly simple as well. It's 72 by 72. Would it be better to use the dual feed rather than the walking foot? Thanks for your help. I still have a lot of work though.
I still have a lot of work too, so does David. Right, another really lovely quilt, really beautiful. Got those darks in there as well, it's really great. What I see in this is some lines coming in just randomly and then some squares coming across doing this kind of thing in a fairly heavy orange thread. I think that if you did a long triple stitch it would look amazing, and you can have squares going over squares, but I would kind of keep the square theme but I would make it random rather than the kind of structure that the piecing has given you. So you'll carry the theme on but you'll give it a lovely little twist. The Quilt as Desired class, which is in season 2, and I've got a little note somewhere and I can't find it. It is, David, what is the price on that class? Remind me.
$40, £30.
Oh, thank you. So $40 or £30. It is an incredibly useful class. And David was just reminding me of all the things that are in it. So layering up a large quilt, how to do in the ditch quilting. You know, when you've got half square triangles or flying geese on the outer edge of a quilt, you've only got a ¼ inch for your actual binding. I show you how to add extra fabric there. We do loads of straight line, we do loads of wavy line stitches, we use free motion embroidery. I show you masses of different techniques, but then there is also an example which is the Jack's chain quilt, which is another one of the classes where I show you that quilt and how I take inspiration from the quilt for the quilting design. So for those of you who've got questions on how to quilt it, I cannot recommend that class highly enough. So that is my suggestion for you, Liz, is to do those square things, or certainly play with that idea. But for those of you who don't have season 2, it's a really useful class in season 2. And can I just say to you, I mean, I'm not trying to do the hard sell here thing, but you know, it's £30 for one class if you buy just an individual class. If you buy season 2, which has got tons of stuff in it, you get 12 classes for £120 or $150. That is the price of 4 individual classes. It's such a good deal, and those classes are there for you for as long as you want. So that is my answer to you on that one, Liz, and I think we just have 2 more to go.
Okay, so put me on. Carol Ann in Sioglu, we've got another one. Any ideas on how to quilt this? Here is the image, a long overdue wedding gift. All she can come up with is stippling all over in the rose squares with stitch in the stitch on the coral borders, but any advice you can give would be gratefully received.
I think because this is about an anniversary and weddings and love and being together, hearts is definitely where to go, and I'd be very tempted to put a relatively large heart in the centre. Might do some consecutive lines of stitching, echo quilting, and then I'd make some paper templates of hearts, and I would have kind of little bits of hearts all dotted all over, different sizes, overlapping and stippling in between, and that would look really beautiful. And you could use red or dark pinks or corally colours in this. It wouldn't disrupt the design at all, it would add to it. But you should watch that Quilt as Desired class.
That's the theme going on there. Okay, so next month it won't be how to quilt, it'll be something completely different, and it'll probably be a different class that answers some of the questions. The next and final question is from Judy Clark. And Judy says, what type of batting offers the softest, most cuddly quilt for machine quilting and also for quilting by hand? Thank you. And that's from Judy Clark.
Judy, I think that batting is a really big question, and it depends on the end use of the quilt, who's going to use the quilt, you know. So for an adult, and you were hand quilting, I would have wool in the quilt because it's beautiful, really temperature regulating. But for a child, maybe not, because that quilt needs to go in the washing machine, and a wool wadding, although it's beautiful to hand quilt, wouldn't want to go into the washing machine very often. I like a cotton batting for machine quilting because it really helps to stick the layers together, and you don't get lots of movement like you do with polyester. So I think it's a really big question, and you need to kind of narrow down what the quilt actually is, what you are expecting the quilt to do, who is going to use it, and choose the wadding that is appropriate to the method that you are actually going to stitch the layers together. So there isn't one answer on that, Judy. I think, you know what, that really is, there's a whole load of chat to be done just about waddings, isn't there? Really, it's such a big area, and also what you've used in the past and what you've really liked. So perhaps you could come back to us, Judy, with a little bit more specific information as to what you're actually making your quilts for, and then I can answer that more specifically.
Okay, I think we'll draw. Sorry, I'll put myself on. I think we'll put my sound on. We'll draw a line there. Thank you everybody for all your questions. Philippa, I've just given you the winners.
Right, okie dokie. So the football will have started. Has England scored yet? I would imagine they've got 3 goals in the net already. Answers on a postcard if you know. Right, no. So can I just, before I do our 2 winners for our lovely little chicken fabric and the clips, last month one of our book winners for this pre-loved book was Sue Range, and we have not heard from Sue. David has emailed repeatedly. He's been very diligent in trying to get her to get in touch with us.
We don't have phone numbers, we don't have an address, so
we only have your emails. That's the only information we have. So if people don't respond to our emails, we cannot get in touch with you. We're going to give her until next month's live to respond, and if she doesn't respond, then this book will be up for grabs again. Okay, so that is that. Now then, before we finish, so David David had a birthday earlier in the month. How old were you, David?
It had a 0 in it.
Yeah, so this isn't a very exciting big birthday prize, but there are 1 or 2 beers in there for when you're watching the football. Now,
Thank you very much.
a session beer is beers that you get in when you're going to have a session, like when you're watching the football, and it's a very low alcohol beer. But you've got a bottle of Yorkshire Stingo there, which not just a Yorkshire Stingo. I've given him some organic beers as well. But Yorkshire Stingo is the last one you're going to pull out, isn't it? It must be the other one. Yeah, that's that one. It's 8%, which is an incredibly strong beer.
It's basically barley wine. It's basically barley. Yeah. Thank you very much, Philippa. I wasn't expecting that at all. So I've got various beers. Thank you.
No, just all of us would just like to thank David for all he does for us. He works really hard, and I didn't want his birthday to go by without just even a small little note. And I'm sure you all will be with me in wishing him a very happy birthday. So I haven't talked about my lampshades. I'll do it another time. So our 2 lucky winners this evening are Pam McGarry,
I think so, yeah.
Yep, and Kat Molesworth. So Pam and Kat, David will email you, find your address, and then we'll get your little gifts off to you.
Susan Biggs says there's no score yet.
Oh, thank you, Susan. That's what I want to know. So, whatever you're doing for the rest of the day or the evening, I hope the sun is shining on you. We will be back towards the end of July, which will be just before the Festival of Quilts, so we'll let you know a little bit more about our plans for that. Thank you for all of your really wonderful questions. Thank you for joining us. So from David
Bye-bye.
And from me, wish you lots of happy sewing. Take care, everybody, and enjoy the football.
Okay.